on the Monk Life Meditation channel. I'm your friendly former Buddhist monk, Rob, or whatever you want to call me is okay. And we're here to talk, we're here to concern ourselves, not just to talk, but to concern ourselves with the truth. This is not for the faint of hearted. This isn't for the people who are looking to go out to the bar tonight or to have a pleasurable time. This is for the people who are concerned with the spiritual truth, the ultimate reality, the nature of the self, the true source. And this can sound a little bit hippy-dippy, but we have to be able and willing to be here enough, to be present enough, to listen and to see what this is all about, because otherwise we're just going to be in a mess of our usual complicated thinking and our usual constant seeking activity. Seeking for pleasure, seeking for status, seeking for someone to tell us how great we are, seeking for some kind of relationship. And this is not here for seeking. This is not a place of seeking. This is a place for spiritual non-seeking. And we'll be exploring that together today. Now, we may be looking for a quick fix or a quick explanation about what is the truth, what is enlightenment, who is the Buddha, what is it like to be free from suffering. But there's no real explanation for that. It's kind of like if you want to hear the beautiful birds sing, you might rush outside your door in the morning and take off your hat and open your ears really widely. Where's the bird? Where's the bird? And you may hear the normal birds that way, but you won't hear the profound sound of the Garuda bird, whose wingspan is so wide, flying over the earth only once every 2,000 years, covering up the entire sky. In the same way that when we go fishing, and I don't necessarily advocate for fishing, I think that's maybe not as moral an activity as we can aspire to as human beings in 2025. But if you go fishing and you just let your hook to be right under the surface of the water or just floating on the surface, you might catch a fish, but you're going to catch a very small fish. So here we're bringing on the weight, the W-E-I-G-H-T of reality, of our human experience, to sink that hook down, down deep into the ocean of reality so that we can catch the fish of profound non-thought. Some people ask me often, actually, they ask me, how do you support yourself? How are you able to live this way? What is your job? My job is to incite non-thinking. And there's a pun intended in that, the insight of non-thinking, the insight of the penetration into no thought, but rather direct experience that's not based on thinking. So for the people who are here now, you better be ready to not think. Otherwise, get out. Get out, spirits. Get out, demons. Get out, apparitions. Get out, illusions. You're in the wrong place. You get out of here. You go. Hey, go. In Buddhism, it tells us that for the people who have many desires, they have many complex thoughts about themselves and the people around them and the world, it's very difficult to support these kinds of people. So the practice here is to be easily supported by what is already. What is already here and now. Allow that to support you. If you're always chasing after your hunger, if you're always chasing after, you don't want to feel this way, you don't want to feel the suffering that's here, it's going to be very difficult to deal with that suffering. But if you dare to be willing to experience, if only for a brief moment, if only for a brief period of time, this state, this way of non-seeking, then the door to liberation will open up. Now, anyone here, evil spirits, you get out, you go out. When I wake up in the morning, or when I wake up in the present moment like this, and the evil spirits come here, I say, get out, go! I don't accept those thoughts of not accepting. We had a person comment. I don't know if that comment got through because sometimes the spam filters catch it. But that person, Klee guy, they commented, they said, "This is bullshit. What do you think you're doing? Are you honestly doing this?" And the fact of the matter is that when it comes to the fruits of life, when it comes to the mangoes and the durians and the melon fruits of life, the red grapefruit fruits of life, there's nothing more nutritious, there's nothing better than human feces. People don't understand that. People don't know that because we tend not to be in the habit, culturally or socially, of collecting our feces together. You know what feces are, right? That stuff that comes out of your body after you eat. Collecting our feces together and kind of fermenting and transforming that and developing those feces into nutritious soil, nutritious compost. So we're here to compost the mind, to compost the suffering. As Thich Nhat Hanh says, no mud, no lotus. Stop distracting yourself. Stop distracting yourself on the YouTube, on the TikTok videos, on the Netflix, pursuing sensuality, pursuing sexuality, pursuing thoughts about things. And instead, we stop. Hey! Stop and embrace, stop and recognize, stop and experience what is already here. Because your life is only here. Wherever here is for you right now, that's the only place where life is. And here is really no place because you can't catch here. Hey! You can't catch here. You can't hold on to here. Hey! And in the same way that here, there's nothing to, hey! Here, there's nothing to get a hold of. There's nothing to conceptually understand about here, like a rainbow. Do I do one on one-on-one Zoom coaching, I'm happy to have a call with you, but very expensive, very, very expensive to have a one-on-one Zoom meeting with me. You know how much it costs? You know how expensive it is? Priceless. And I make sure I accept any form of payment as well for that priceless cost. Oh, John, thank you so much. Hey! We're really getting going now, right? We're transforming suffering. I just told you how much it is. It's priceless. If you want to have a one-on-one Zoom coaching call with a former Buddhist monk who wears a red hat like this, it is, I'm telling you the price. It is priceless. Very expensive. Kari, you can send me an email. Hey! Because we need sometimes a jump scare to wake us up. Get us out of that normal way of seeing things, normal way of being, normal way of activities that we do. It's not free. It's priceless. So in the same way, we want to buy our freedom. We want to get our freedom. Well, how much do you have to pay for freedom? How much money do you have to pay to have a one-on-one Zoom coaching call with a former Buddhist monk such as me? The cost is priceless. There is nothing that you can buy that will give you freedom, because freedom is, excuse me, there's no cost or price, because it's a priceless cost, it's a high cost, it's the highest cost. It's the highest cost. The cost of see, this is what people really resonate. How much is it? Buying and selling, buying and selling. How much is it? How much is it? What are you selling? What are you selling? What are you trying to do? How much is it? Who else is buying it? Are there any celebrities buying it? You know, I actually had a celebrity reach out to me on Instagram. They started following me, so I messaged them. I said, what's going on here? Kind of like a new age, techno, rapper kind of celebrity person. I said, what's going on? And they reached out to me and they say, you know, they're dealing with addiction, and because they live the wealthy lifestyle, etc., so they know that the money and the privilege and the power and all that, social power and material power, doesn't actually help them deal with their suffering. And you know, they said, I definitely want to have a call with you. I definitely want to connect with you, right? But actually, they didn't follow through. And that's one of our biggest problems when we start to approach freedom. When we start to approach that we want to be free, is we get distracted in our desires and our fears, and we don't know that there is access to freedom. Maybe someone can write this down in a comment for our friend Kari Lightyear. The email that you can use is bantevp@gmail.com. So that's BHANTE bantavp@gmail.com. Yeah, bantavp@gmail.com. That's right. I don't know what more you will get from scheduling the private Zoom spiritual coaching call with a former Buddhist monk. I don't know what much more that you'll get just from my live sessions. But anyway, you're very welcome. And, it's a priceless experience for sure. Satnam. So, and then we feel, right? And then how do we step more into that? What's that about? What's going on? Step back. Because life is like that. Life is, and some people get that. It reminds me, I have to message someone who's. It's interesting. I've had people reaching out to me recently who are like in hospice situations or adjacent to people in hospice situations. So the Buddha teaches us that sickness, old age, death, these are holy messengers. So it doesn't matter how comfortable or wealthy or convenient your life is, eventually you're going to realize that that body is going to melt. So it's going to even be deeper and more profound than whoa kind of experience. Some people find themselves in prison. Some people find themselves in really difficult situations. So we find ourselves locked into this suffering. And then, well, how do we figure it out? What do I buy? What do I buy? What do I buy to end suffering? You step back. Step back, even from the stepping back itself. That's from Lumpal of Wat Ram Bodhidharma. Not about stepping back or not stepping back. Step back from the stepping back itself. This came up recently where I was talking with someone and they were asking me this question as well about why did you leave the Buddhist monk life? And I told them, I was a Buddhist monk and a content creator and spiritual teacher or whatever for 7 years as a Buddhist monk. And then one day, I wasn't a Buddhist monk anymore, so naturally, I have quite a few people who follow me and listen to my teaching, and maybe they consider me to be their teacher. I don't know if that's the case, or their spiritual friend or whatever. And so naturally, I better have a good explanation for why I'm not a Buddhist monk anymore. I better lay it out. Why? I better give a good story. The reality is that the best story is storyless. And just like getting cancer, just like waking up dead, just like the moon rising later on. It is unexplainable. Or as they say in the higher sciences, shit happens. Things change. And we may be looking for an explanation of why things change, or we may be looking for an explanation about why we have certain thoughts, or we may be looking for an explanation about why the world is, or we may be looking for an explanation about why someone else is a certain way. So you can go on looking, or you can come back to your center and offer the blessing of irrelevance to those stories, to those appearances, to those ideas, to those positions that you may want to take. A way that I've heard it explained is we might have some big goal about spirituality or spiritual life, and that may be a well thought out goal, or it may be just a goal that's our some kind of escapism, not very well informed goal. And when it comes to reaching that goal, like becoming a more serious practitioner of Buddhism, or becoming a monk or a nun, or finding yourself in conditions, in environmental and spiritual conditions that are supportive for spiritual development, it's not really about you picking and choosing and controlling or influencing reality to meet your needs, as it is in the way of the worldly people or the materialistic world. Rather, these kinds of situations come up naturally according to your blessings. So how do you make blessings? Well, you do good deeds. You listen to the Dharma. You chant the name of the Buddha and the Bodhisattvas, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Instead of looking for how you get your ideal situation or your ideal goal, look at what you're already experiencing and how to make a deeper, better, more thorough use of what is already here, to practice on the path as much as you can. And if you don't really know what it means to practice on the path because you haven't had much training or you haven't had much supportive instructions, then that's one of the best ways for you to sow blessings. Listening to Dharma talks, listening to guided meditation instructions from well-known Buddhist teachers like Thich Nhat Hanh, like Ajahn Brahm, and there are many. But it's this desire mindset that's very shallow, it's very vapid. I want that. I want to be a spiritual teacher. I want to be an influencer. I want to be a digital nomad. I want to be a superstar. I want to be a man with many wives, a king with much wealth and many wives and many jewels and many fine possessions. That these desires can lead you, maybe lead you pretty far in the world of materialism, but they cannot lead you far in the world of recognizing what is already. Recognizing fulfillment and recognizing the importance of renunciation. Recognizing the importance of having a strong idea and being willing to put that down. Some ideas come up again and again, but regardless of if they come up again and again or not, they're not your ideas. They're just ideas. They're just thoughts. Just like what you see different colors, you see different people, you see different places. Those people, places, and things are not possessed by anyone, actually. And this is why the Dharma is it's called a sword of wisdom, because it cuts through everything that is assumed up or created, right? If you look at someone's bike and you say, you don't own that bike. You don't own that body. That is not your body. That is not your house. Those are not your possessions. That is not your phone. Then you better be ready to detach. Don't worry about what the other person is doing. You have to be ready to detach. You have to be ready to embody non-possessiveness. You have to be ready to embody non-ownership. So it's said that enlightenment is a natural process, something that happens naturally. It's not something that you control. So how to understand that? Well, let's take a look at the laundry. I can say that's my laundry. I can say that I put the coins in there to make that washing machine go. But those are just words. Those are just thoughts. And if you want to get closer to the truth, there's no possession in that. So we may be ready to fight. We may be ready to fight about what we possess, what we think we own. And that is just the nature of our desire and our attachment. So you can try like me. You can try together with me this kind of meditation thing to see what happens. So I sit in this chair. You can sit in your chair and get your body comfortable. Close your eyes and breathe. Breathe and notice. The thoughts that you begin to experience when you do that, and the physical experience in the body that you begin to notice when you do that, don't identify or react to those objects of your noticing. Instead of reacting to those physical objects or those mental objects of your noticing, direct that reactivity towards attention on the breathing in the nose. Don't try to be strict. Don't try to be tight, but fall into openness. Memories, thoughts, opinions, ideas arising in the mind. Return to openness, return to breathing. Don't take those thoughts or opinions or ideas seriously. Just notice it without involvement. direct involvement into breathing, feeling, breathing sensations, breathing experience. And it can be very pleasant to breathe like that. In our peaceful breathing, offering all kinds of forgiveness. Be the one not who thinks or understands thoughts or has particular thoughts, but rather be the forgiver of thoughts. Actively forgive thoughts without identification with them. In our meditation, we may go deeply into the mind. So when we go deeply into the mind, it is not a place to believe, but still a place to forgive. Forgive identity, forgive thoughts, forgive thinker. Go more and more completely into breathing awareness. Completely and totally don't identify with the thoughts as being yours or the experience as being yours. Just offer forgiveness to the thoughts that appear without personal identity. Offer forgiveness to all senses of a personal identity. All right, time to sing. We're all moving on a journey to nowhere, taking it easy, taking it slow, taking it slow. No more worries, no need to hurry, nothing to carry. Let it all go, let it all go. We're all moving on a journey to nowhere, taking it easy, taking it slow, taking it slow. No more worries, no need to hurry, nothing to carry. Let it all go, let it all go. Now, this is not the Beatles. This is not a yellow submarine. That is just nonsense. That's not coming out of the higher mind. That's coming from the rear end. Many of us, we pass gas and we think we've received a message from Lord Buddha or from God high above. In some way, that's true. But you have to have the right view to see that and to make use of it that way. So we don't go around listening to any kind of Beatles music, Yellow Submarine music, and conflate that with the Dharma. This is a practice song. This is not for entertainment. This is for practice. The entertainment is only to wake you up with a cold bucket of water and say, get out there and start sweeping. Start doing hard manual labor. You don't get to teach. You don't get to meditate. You have to go and carry the water and chop the firewood. Or get out. No Beatles, no Yellow Submarine. So, my clothes are still drying. This is live, Jason. Come on. We do it live. We're doing this live. That's the only way to do it. There's no schedule here. You wake me up in the morning with a cold bucket of water and you tell me to put the fries in the bag. I say, hey, I've got a Priceless hat and I'm going to put it on my head and be on my way because I'm not here to do what you tell me to do. And you shouldn't be here to do what anyone tells you to do. You shouldn't be here to listen to anyone's thoughts or anyone's direction. Return to the center. Let's listen to some teachings from Venerable Master Thich Nhat Hanh on embracing suffering. I tell you, you could start a whole community. You could start a whole Dharma coffee shop right in the center of Tokyo. Dharma coffee shop and hostel and tea shop also. Embracing suffering. If we let the suffering come up and just take over our mind, we can be quickly overwhelmed by it. So we have to invite another energy to come up at the same time, the energy of mindfulness. The function of mindfulness is first to recognize the suffering and then to take care of the suffering. The work of mindfulness is first to recognize the suffering and second to embrace it. So the reason that we have to meditate is because we may be so compulsively distracted in our complicated thinking and our consumption of media and food and alcohol, etc., that we think that we're not suffering. And then we're walking around like a big fat idiot. There's nothing wrong with being big. There's nothing wrong with being fat. There's nothing wrong with being an idiot. But if we don't recognize that, then we may try to climb Mount Everest and find ourselves dead or even worse, putting the lives of others in danger because of our lack of capacity to stop and recognize. So the work of this mindfulness, or this present moment awareness of what is already, is unconditional. It doesn't depend on the stupidity of others. It doesn't depend on, I'm going to say something, I'm going to give my opinion. It doesn't depend on that. It depends on nothing. And so if we're so full of all these different things that we're just constantly involving ourselves with, well, we won't actually have the chance to recognize that we are a big fat idiot. Okay, or a big skinny idiot. Okay, or a small, muscular, wise person. Because this is also an identity. And the helpfulness of pointing out our inadequacies, or what we may be self-conscious about, is that we're much less likely to feel satisfied in that being a fulfilled identity. So none of us want to be stupid. We all want to be smart. None of us want to be unable to go for a walk or have a healthy body. But all of us want to have the opposite. So the point here is to address and to cut through that personal identity that we're building up. Whether it's a great, big, enlightened person or a poor, unenlightened person, these are all just identity-based views. So please listen closely. The work of mindfulness is first to recognize the suffering, and second, to embrace it. A mother taking care of a crying baby naturally will take the child into her arms without suppressing, judging, or ignoring the crying. Mindfulness is like that mother, recognizing and embracing suffering without judgment. So the practice is not to fight or suppress the feeling, but rather to cradle it with a lot of tenderness. When a mother embraces her child, that energy of tenderness begins to penetrate into the body of the child. Even the mother doesn't understand at first why the child is suffering, and she needs some time to find out what the difficulty is. Just her act of taking the child into her arms with tenderness can already bring relief. If we can recognize and cradle the suffering while we breathe mindfully, then there is relief already. Now, listen very, very closely here, because this is our difficulty. Embracing our suffering may seem to be the opposite of what we want to do, especially if our suffering is very large. And I don't know about the people here who are tuning in, but my suffering is very large. And it can seem to be the opposite of what I want to do, to embrace that suffering or to face it. As with depression, as with states of depression or states of anxiety. Depression is one of the most widespread forms of suffering in our time. It can take away our peace, our joy, our stability, and even our ability to eat, move about, or do simple tasks. It can seem unsurmountable, and we may think that the only thing we can do is either to run away from it or give into it. And sometimes actually running away from our suffering, we think, is the practice of embracing that suffering. So to make sure that we're not doing that, we find the time, we find the moment to stop. Stop and meditate in a traditional way. But non-judgmentally recognizing and embracing this great suffering is not at all the same thing as giving into it. Once you have offered your acknowledgement and care to this suffering, And the method or the way that we can practice that is through our mindful breathing, our intentional, present, mindful breathing. So we can embrace and be aware of that suffering. Once you have offered your acknowledgement and care to this suffering, it naturally will become less impenetrable and more workable. And then you have the chance to look into it deeply with kindness, but still always with a solid ground of mindful breathing to support you and find out why it has come to you. It is trying to get your attention, to tell you something, and now you can take the opportunity to listen. The greatest trauma that all of us have is the trauma of our constant avoidance. Constantly avoiding what is already and falling into identity-based view. What's your story, man? Tell me about the horrible things that happened to you. Tell me about your trauma. How about I tell you about the hat that my hand missed in the present moment? And when we, as one of my spiritual friends and one of our Sangha members here mentioned, once we develop a ground of practice, the teaching becomes the teacher. We don't need to identify with someone else's identity as a teacher or our own identity as a traumatized person or a suffering person. But rather, the teaching is a way of actualizing or bringing about our own practice. And then the teaching that applies to us, or the teaching that we are able to make use of, is the teaching that brings us into that practice. It's not about you, it's not about me, it's not about anyone's personal identity. Now listen to this. The suffering, it is the depression, the anxiety. It is trying to get your attention, to tell you something. And now you can take the opportunity to listen. Now you can also ask someone to look with you, a teacher, a friend, a psychotherapist. Whether alone or together with your friends, you can explore what kind of roots it has and what nutriments and habits of consumption have been feeding your sorrow. You can discover how, through looking deeply, you can transform this organic garbage into compost, which in turn may become many beautiful flowers of understanding, compassion, and joy. So, something important here is that the suffering, when we think about suffering, it's oftentimes framed in this way of like weakness. It's framed in this way of, you were traumatized, or you can't deal with life, or you're not strong and powerful enough to get over this problem that you have. So this can be very confusing, because when we actually start to recognize and embrace that we are suffering, people may view it that way. But suffering does not always appear in that way. For people who actually take the time to step back from social involvement or interpersonal ideas and face their own selves, their own direct experience, without all of the additives of alcohol and movies and TV shows, etc., we find out that, oh, I am vulnerable. Oh, I am suffering. Oh, I often feel depressed. Oh, I often feel anxious. Oh, I've been covering up and running away from the suffering within myself by all of these outside things. But if someone doesn't take the time to do that, they may think, I'm a big, strong, happy man, drinking beer, having good times. I've got money, I've got power, all the things are mine. And so as this big fat or big skinny or just big idiot is walking around with their beer and singing their song, okay, and their money and their nice car, etc., they are destroying the planet. they are causing the suffering within themselves that they don't address and face and recognize to then permeate into the society, their families, and their relationships. So the practice here is not, we're whining and crying and, having these hippy-dippy monologues, because we're weak. Actually, these hippy-dippy monologues are the invitation for you to step back from your own identity and recognize the suffering within you, or recognize what is already. One more article, then we're gonna, big event coming up. Put some W's in the chat, leave some likes in the chat, everybody. We got a big event. I'm gonna be folding my laundry as a former Buddhist monk live on my YouTube channel. So this is entitled The Bell. Even with the best intention, and even with a long-standing mindfulness practice, we all have the tendency to run into the future or go back into the past to search for happiness elsewhere, or to, as we often do, search for our suffering, clinging to our suffering. And this is not just in a general way of like how we identify ourselves or how we look into our youth, or we look into the goals that we have in the future, but this can actually be a moment by moment mental habit of grabbing onto past experiences just a moment ago and seeking out future experiences, or imagining what's going to happen in a few moments. So it's this constant waste of energy, basically. So even with the best intention, and even with a long-standing mindfulness practice, we all have the tendency to run into the future or go back into the past, to search for happiness elsewhere. A bell of mindfulness, whether it is an actual bell or some other sound, is a wonderful reminder to come back to ourselves, to come back to life here in the present moment. The sound of the bell or the sound of the hat is the voice of the Buddha within. Every one of us has Buddha nature. That is the capacity for compassionate, clear, understanding nature within us. So when we hear the sound of the bell, or when we see that Bhante has, or Rob, whoever he is, whoever it is, it's actually not someone, is alive, and he's banging his hat around on the table, and he's at the laundromat, and he's saying he's a former Buddhist monk, things like that. Whatever it is, right? When we hear the sound of the bell, if we like practicing mindfulness, we can respond to that intervention with respect and appreciation. So we can make use of that in the deepest way. But it's not about the bell, it's about our own Buddha nature. It's this reminder for our own, and everything is a reminder like this. This reminder for our own inner capacity for compassionate, clear understanding. Thich Nhat Hanh says here, in my tradition, every time we hear the bell, we pause. We stop moving, talking, and thinking, and we listen to the voice of the heart. We don't say that we hit the bell or strike the bell. Rather, we say we invite the bell to sound, because the bell is a friend, an enlightened friend that helps us wake up and guides us home to ourselves. Gentleness and non-violence are characteristics of the sound of the bell. Its sound is gentle but very powerful. When you hear the sound of the bell, take the opportunity to come home to yourself and enjoy your breathing. Take a few moments to inhale and exhale deeply and touch a little happiness. If you want to experience what the end of suffering will feel like, listen to this. This is where I fully, I really like Thich Nhat Hanh in this. If you want to experience what the end of suffering will feel like. It is in the here and the now with this breath. If you want nirvana, it is right here. You can repeat after me if you like. Breathing in, I know I am breathing in. Breathing out, I smile. Thank you. I'm going to fold my laundry. And if you have any questions, insults, comments, praise, you're welcome to put that in the chat. Bonjour. Anybody want to see a magic trick? Yes or no? You want to see a magic trick? It's pretty good, right? the sun, it shines on my face and on my eyes. The sun, it shines in my heart. The sun, it shines in my heart. The rain, it falls from the mountains to my toes. The rain, it falls in my heart. The rain, it falls in my heart. From the mountains, the flowers, the children and the deer, we all love each other. There's a place for everyone in my heart. Now there's a mindset. There's a mindset that's out there that I'm aware of that will call a song like that or a sound like that childish. And when we get into that situation, that's when the staff comes out. Hey! What are you doing here? Now, there's a time and a place for everything. We don't need to, play that on the speakers all the time. There can be a lot of variety in our lives, but this kind of song is a teaching, actually, and a declaration that is imbued with wisdom. Where is the sun? Is the sun over there? Is it 4 o'clock? No. The sun shines inside of my heart. Where does the rain fall? Does the rain fall on my boyfriend in New Mexico? No. The rain falls in my heart. And now, I don't know where I was reading this, but I was reading this recently about, I think it was a poem. I think it was a poem from Stonehouse. And Shelley, don't get fired, okay? But if you're doing something other than working at work, then being concerned with the path is definitely a good thing. So listen to this. I think this teaching here. It's a poem from Stonehouse. Anyway, the teaching that I'm referring to is that everything originates, the fruits, the tree originates from its roots. So don't try to understand reality by the tree. The tree is just an expression of its roots. So we may have the intention to help. We may have the intention to be compassionate. We may have the intention to benefit someone. But that can express in all kinds of different ways. So we can have our staff and say, "Hey!" But our intention has nothing to do with harming that person. Our intention has nothing to do with making that person feel excluded. That "Hey!" is actually a very powerful invitation to recognize their own mind. And, oftentimes to shut up. And we say, well, I'm an American. I've got free speech. And then I say, well, this is a Taiwan. So you better watch out. Or even better yet, don't get caught up in watching out, but rather out is just a reminder to watch in. Okay, that's all, folks. Be happy, be peaceful, be free from suffering, and I'll see you again soon.